Hello, sixth graders. I hope that you've already by now watched the videos over how to use a distributive property using common factors. Right now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through number 1 on the assignment. I'm going to work through it. If you were confused in the video, please watch this now. Remember that you can always press pause as I'm working through it so that you can work through it, and you can always go back and rewind it and watch it again if you didn't understand what I said at first. Also, remember that you can use a voice level 2 to talk to your classmates about what we're working on here if you're still confused, all right? So I hope that you have your pencil and you have your notebook paper and that you're ready to go. Let's get started. So it says here at the top, use a distributive property and the greatest common factor to write an equivalent expression. Show all your work. All right, number 1, list the factors of 30, then list the factors of 45. What is the greatest common factor of both numbers? What's the GCF of 30 and 45? Then use the GCF, or the greatest common factor, to write an equivalent expression, 30 plus 45. Okay, so let's first follow these steps. Let's list all the factors of 30 and 45. So I'm going to list the factors of 30. I know that 1 times 30 equals 30. I know that 2 times 15 equals 30. I know that 3 times 10 equals 30. And I also know that 5 times 6 equals 30. I don't believe that there are any more multiple factors of 30. I think I got them all. If I didn't get them all, please pause this video and tell your classmates that I didn't get them all because I made a woohoo, okay? So let's go to 45. I know that 1 times 45 equals 45. I don't think that 2 times anything equals 45, but I do know that 3 times 15 equals 35. And I also know that 5 times 9 equals 45. I believe those are all the factors of 45. So I'm going to look at 30 and I'm going to look at 45 and I'm going to see if they have numbers in common. And I remember, I'm looking for the greatest, the biggest number they have in common, the greatest common factor, okay? They both have a 1. So I'm going to underline that. Let me see if they have anything else. They do not both have a 30. They do not both have a 2. They do both have a 15. They both have a 3. And they both have a 5. Okay. Out of all of these numbers, what is the greatest number? I hope that you all said 15. That is correct. Okay. So now I can answer the second question. It says, what is the greatest common factor of both numbers? What's the GCF of 30 and 45? Well, we just figured out that it's 15. 15 is the greatest common factor. Okay, now it says to use the greatest common factor to write an equivalent expression, 30 plus 45. So what we're going to do now is that since we know our greatest common factor is 15, we're going to go ahead and write the number 15. Okay, that's our first step. Then we're going to write an open parentheses, a plus sign, and a closed parentheses. So now what we're going to do is we're going to look at our two numbers. Our first number was 30. Do you all remember that? 30? And we listed out the factors of 30 and 45. And we said the greatest common factor was 15. So for my first number that I'm going to put in here, let me go ahead and underline that place. My first number I'm going to put in here. I am looking for a number that I can multiply by 15 to equal 30. 15 times what number equals 30? If you said 2, then you're very correct. 2. So in the parentheses, you're looking for what number times the number on the outside of the parentheses equals 15. And I'll explain that in just a second why we're doing that, okay? So now in the second blank, I'm looking for a number that I can multiply by 15 that's going to equal 45. So 15 times what number equals 45? Well, if you said 3, then you are very correct. And this actually would be my final answer. 15, open parenthesis, or times 2 plus 3, close parentheses. That would be an equivalent way to write 30 plus 45. And if you're like, Ms. Edifier, how does that make sense? Let me show you. I'm going to zoom in really quickly. All right, so if we have 15 times 2 plus 3, we learned already that whenever we're using the distributive property, let me rewrite this again. The distributive property, we are going to multiply the numbers that are inside by the numbers outside. You all remember that? So these arrows stand for addition, subtraction, multiplication, or division. I hope they use the multiplication because that's what they stand for, okay? So my first one, my first arrow says 15 times 2. My second arrow says 15 times 3. And because there's a plus sign in between them, I'm going to bring my plus sign down. 15 times 2 is equal to 30. And 15 times 3 is equal to 45. So I just checked my answer, and my answer of 15 times 2 plus 3 is equivalent to 30 plus 45, okay? Now, what if you made a mistake? What if when you were writing all the factors of 30 and 45, you didn't find the greatest common factor of 15? Maybe instead of finding the greatest common factor of 15, you instead made a mistake, which is okay because we can learn from our mistakes, that the greatest common factor was 5. Okay? So that's how you went ahead and solved the problem. So I'm going to solve it again using this mistake because we could all make mistakes, and I want you to be able to fix your mistake if you make it. Okay? So let's say I made a mistake and I said the greatest common factor was 5. Are we all with me? And then I did open parentheses, plus sign, close parentheses. Okay? Then I asked myself, 5 times what number equals 30? And I got that the number was 6 because 5 times 6 equals 30. And I found the number over here that 5 times what number equals 45. And I realized that it was 9. So I have 5, open parentheses, 6 plus 9, close parentheses. And I believe that this was my answer. So what you're looking for whenever you finish is not only does it equal back to 30 plus 45, but I want you to look closely at these two numbers, okay? Oh, sorry. Trying to zoom out a little bit. There we go. I want to look closely at these two numbers that we came up with in the beginning. 2 and 3. Besides the number 1, do 2 and 3 have any common factors? The answer is no. No, they don't. Okay? And that's how we know we've got the right numbers. But let's look at 6 and 9. Do 6 and 9 have any common factors besides the number 1? Well, I'm going to go ahead and list them out here. I'm going to write them in black. I know the factors of 6 are 1 and 6, and then 2 times 3. The factors of 9 are 1 times 9, and then 3 times 3. If you look very carefully, they do have a common factor of 3. This tells me that I do not have the right numbers listed. I have not used the greatest common factor. I've used a common factor, but not the greatest common factor. So what could I do? What could I do now that I've made a mistake? Do I have to go back and start all over again? No, no, no. This is what you're gonna do. So we notice that they both have a common factor of 3. Do we all see that? So we're just gonna say 6 divided by 3 equals what number? 2. 9 divided by 3 equals what number? 3. Bring your plus sign down, bring down your parentheses. Okay? Since we divided the numbers by 3, both 6 and 9, the numbers that were inside the parentheses, what we're going to do to the outside is we are going to multiply this number by 3. So we're going to say 5 times 3 equals what number? Let me go back to the previous slide. So we're going to say 5 times 3 equals what number? And that's 15. Do you all see how I fixed my mistake? So I'm going to repeat it really quickly. I listed the common factors of 6 and 9. I realized that they have a common factor of 3. So I divided both the 6 and the 9 by the number 3. I wrote my answers right here. 6 divided by 3 is 2. 9 divided by 3 is 3. Then, using that common factor between 6 and 9, I multiplied the number over here, the number outside, by that common factor. So 5 times 3 is 15. And if you notice, I now have the correct answer of 15, open parentheses, 2 plus 3 as my final answer. So that's how you can fix your mistake. You're going to go on to complete the rest of the assignment, numbers 1 through 10, using the same method that I used here. If you need to rewatch the video, talk to a friend, rewatch the other video, please go ahead and do so. Enjoy your class time today. Goodbye, guys.